There's breaking news out of the great state of New Jersey, the great part not applying to the not held in esteem parking lot lawyer Alina Habba. According to the New Jersey Globe today, they're reporting that United States Attorney, interim, and that adjective interim is going to be doing a lot of heavy lifting right now. Interim U.S. Attorney Alina Habba told her staff yesterday afternoon that her tenure as a federal prosecutor could come to an end this Tuesday when she hits the 120-day limit for appointments for interim U.S. attorneys. But she did tell her staff that she hopes that she can continue in her role beyond that as she faces the uncertainties of the reality that a group of federal judges meet on Monday. So what do this group of federal judges in New Jersey have anything to do with the interim U.S. Attorney Alina Habba? Well, we always go to the law, don't we, here at the Katie Phang News Channel? So let's do that now. There's a federal statute. Let's head to it now. The federal statute is 28 USC U.S. Code Section 546, and it is entitled Vacancies. And it says the Attorney General may appoint a U.S. attorney for the district in which the office of United States Attorney is vacant. The Attorney General shall not appoint as a U.S. attorney a person to whose appointment by the president to that office the Senate refused to give advice and consent, which is interesting. And then here, we're going to go to sub D though here. If an appointment expires under subsection C2, which is the expiration of 120 days after appointment by the Attorney General under this section, if that appointment expires, the district court for such district may appoint a U.S. attorney to serve until that vacancy is filled. The order of appointment by the court shall be filed with the clerk of the court. And that's all it says. There's no further definitions, no further substance. That's all it says. And so the reason why we're talking about that right now is the following. Because there is a meeting on Monday of the federal judges in that district in New Jersey. And what they're going to do on Monday is they purportedly are going to be picking a United States attorney for that jurisdiction. Now, again, Habba's term is due to expire this coming Tuesday. And as you just heard from that federal statute that I read to you, she cannot serve beyond that 120-day period. There seem to be two front runners for this job, both of whom are Republican, no shocker there. The first one is a woman whose name is Desiree Grace. She is currently the first assistant U.S. attorney for that district. And the second kind of dead heat candidate is a former United States District Court judge by the name of Noel Lawrence Hillman. Now, what's a potential wrinkle in this determination by this group of federal judges as to whether or not they want to use Alina Habba as the U.S. attorney? Well, there's currently 4 senior status judges that are sitting on the bench in this district. And the big question, I guess, is, do they get to vote in this process on Monday to be able to decide whether Alina Habba gets to keep her job? Or is there going to be some fraud, waste, and abuse Doge action that's going to happen on Monday? Desiree Grace, the first assistant U.S. attorney, she's been a federal prosecutor since 2016. And interestingly, it was Habba who appointed her as first assistant this past April. This woman, Ms. Grace, has clerked for New Jersey Supreme Court Chief Justice Stuart Rabner and Judge Morton Greenberg of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit. Her competitor for this job, 68-year-old former United States District Court judge, former Judge Hillman, was nominated by President Bush in 2006. He also served as a federal prosecutor from 1992 to 2001. He was on senior status in 2024 and then retired that same year, and now he practices law in private practice in the state of New Jersey. So New Jersey's kind of a funny place for Trump, and not because he buried his ex-wife on the golf course that he has there, but in his first term, convicted felon Donald Trump actually never formally nominated a U.S. attorney from New Jersey. He actually liked a guy named Craig Carpenito. Craig Carpenito was the acting U.S. attorney, and then the federal judges voted to appoint him as the U.S. attorney. So what does all of this mean? Well, all of this means that Alina Habba could be unemployed as of this Tuesday, although probably for not very long, right? Because knowing her, even though she has a win-loss record that no one would admire, frankly, her job as, quote, personal counsel to Donald Trump guarantees she's probably going to get some cushy new job somewhere. But the good news would be that if this parking lot lawyer doesn't get to keep her job as a U.S. attorney, then the harm radius for her, that blast radius, it gets minimized a little bit. Because let's talk about some of the shit she did while she's been the interim U.S. attorney. If you'll recall, she had to drop the charges after a federal judge read her the Riot Act. She had to drop the charges against Newark, New Jersey Mayor Ras Baraka. In turn, he has since sued her and named her individually in his lawsuit for false arrest, etc., right? Malicious prosecution. So Alina, her status as a defendant in that civil lawsuit would still stand regardless of whether or not she loses her job on Tuesday as the interim U.S. attorney. She's also indicted Congresswoman LaMonica MacIver. And you'll recall that Congresswoman MacIver has been indicted because of that same set of action and conduct that happened that day at Delaney Hall, which is being used as a detention facility by the Trump administration's ICE office. And that's the same event where Mayor Ras Baraka got arrested. In addition, and I've covered this extensively here at the Katie Phang News Channel, Alina Habba has alleged that she's launched an investigation into New Jersey's governor and attorney general. And as we know, she's also facing a number of ethics and professional responsibility bar complaints that are targeting her bar license. But again, she's batting zero when it comes to wins for Donald Trump. But clearly, success is not a factor when it comes to, I'll say this, some of the women. Because competency really isn't an issue either for some of the women that are around Donald Trump. I mean, I don't really have to list them all, do I? So what happens usually too when it comes to U.S. attorneys is the home state. The senators from that home state usually have the say. And we've got Andy Kim and Cory Booker, and there is no way in hell that those two are supporting Alina Habba to serve as the U.S. attorney. So, again, it is very likely that Alina will be unemployed by Tuesday. But this dovetails with something that I wanted to cover with you here because I think it's important for you to see the distortion that's happening on the side of the GOP and on the side of the DOJ when it comes to the law. Now, the reason why I bring this up is Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General, and I'm going to my phone because on X, Twitter really for me, he tweeted this on Wednesday of this week. He alleges that there was some newly revealed memo that confirms at least some federal judges were predisposed against the Trump administration. And hold on to your britches here, people, because the hypocrisy is laughable. Quote, "This is a serious breach of the judicial oath and a threat to the rule of law. Every litigant, regardless of politics, is entitled to a fair forum," end quote. I'm going to give you a second to laugh your asses off that Todd Blanche, of all freaking people in this country, has the gall to post something like that on social media. I mean, putting aside that he's posting on social media to begin with, but that really takes the cake. This administration, Todd Blanche, Pamela Joe, the weaponization of this government and the weaponization of the Department of Justice against political enemies and political opponents, and frankly, just Democrats in general. Are you kidding me? And Todd Blanche wants to bitch and moan about what he thinks is some perceived unfairness, but you want to know what he's relying upon? This, quote, newly revealed memo. He quote tweets an article from The Federalist. And people, that is a rag. I would never tell you to spend any time reading it. I took one for the team. I read this shit article from The Federalist, written by a woman by the name of Margot Cleveland, who's, I guess, a professor. Let me check the byline over here. She is a full-time professor. I don't know where. Anyway, maybe at Notre Dame where she got her law degree. Anyway, so she writes this article and she's talking about, and this just came out on Wednesday, by the way. So allegedly, and listen, allegedly is just going to be underscoring everything I'm about to say to you, right? Allegedly, when the judicial conference met in March, the week of March 11th of this year, 2025 in DC, allegedly, there was some statements made by the chief judge of the DC courts, James Boasberg, whose name you've heard so many times here on this channel. We've talked about the work that James Boasberg has done vis-a-vis this administration, and that he really is holding the line when it comes to the rule of law. According to this article in The Federalist, Federal Judge James Boasberg advised Chief Justice John Roberts of the Supreme Court and some 24 other judges at this judicial conference that his DC colleagues, meaning Judge Boasberg's DC colleagues, were, quote, concerned that the administration would disregard rulings of federal courts leading to a constitutional crisis, period, end quote. You know, I say allegedly, and yet even if this is something that Judge Boasberg said, there is nothing wrong there. He is doing a recitation of fact. This administration has wholly disregarded federal orders. It's happening in real time. So for Judge Boasberg to express a concern that there could be a legitimate, true constitutional crisis, meaning that the executive branch refuses to give the respect that is due to the judiciary, which we're seeing happen. So frankly, I think we're in the midst of a constitutional crisis, but I understand Judge Boasberg's timing on this. So the article, in this outrageously skewed fashion, and by the way, let's talk about how smoking gun this is. In a memorandum obtained exclusively by the Federalist, a memorandum, a member of the judicial conference summarized the March meeting. So apparently, this is like hearsay upon 14 layers of hearsay here. Somebody who was there wrote a memorandum upon hearing something that somebody told them that Judge Boasberg said. Does that sound reliable to you? But again, even if Judge Boasberg said it, it's the truth. It's the truth. So, according to this exclusive memorandum of questionable provenance, District of Columbia Chief Judge James Boasberg raised his colleagues' concerns that the Trump administration would disregard rulings of federal courts leading to a constitutional crisis. I mean, Boasberg predicted it, did he not? To which Chief Justice John Roberts allegedly said he expressed hope that that would not happen and in turn no constitutional crisis would materialize. So this lady who wrote this article here, Cleveland is her last name, she claims that this shows that Boasberg and his colleagues hold an anti-Trump bias for the Trump administration, had complied with every court order to date and since for that matter. Remember, she just wrote this garbage on Wednesday, okay? And we all know it's not true. We know that there has been non-compliance, and not just in front of Judge Boasberg, by the way. This woman also says that Judge Boasberg entered a lawless order commanding the Trump administration to halt removals to El Salvador, and that because he found the Trump administration having committed criminal contempt of court, that means there's something wrong with Judge Boasberg. She says Judge Boasberg and his colleagues prejudged Trump as a scofflaw. I mean, no lies detected. Trump as a scofflaw? Hello? Oh, I'm sorry. Do the 34 felony convictions mean nothing to this Notre Dame or this law professor here? She writes, the reality, though, is the president has shown great restraint in the face of an avalanche of lawless lower court orders. Listen, people, again, I wouldn't tell you to go read this. Don't go read this. I had to suffer through reading this, and it was bad enough. Why did I just make you suffer through that as well? I want you to understand, all kidding aside, that the media ecosystem The media ecosystem that exists on the right lives in, are you ready? Fake news land. All of the stuff that Trump says and the Republicans say is fake news or a hoax, whatever, that's where they live. They live in a universe of alternative facts. The fact that this is deemed to be printable in any capacity, and the fact that it is just dead ass wrong, not only on the law, but the facts, just goes to show that the far right media ecosystem is only there to buttress, support, and corroborate what their dear Führer wants to say and wants to have sent out as propaganda. That is the only value to this. Because to castigate or to put into a negative light in any way what Judge Boasberg has done and these other amazing federal court judges. And by the way, it's not just, quote, lower court judges, it is appellate court judges as well, right? That are telling this administration that they are wrong. To couch it in this way and to almost create this aura of suspicion about whether or not they should even be having their jobs, because you know what's going to happen now? You're going to hear Blanche and others call for the impeachment of these judges. Listen, they've already called for the impeachment of Judge James Boasberg. That's already happened. That's a Stephen Miller favorite. You know, I'm not saying that hasn't already happened, but there has to be some way of content moderation, and yet that doesn't exist on the far right. But I wanted you guys to see how they start teeing things up. I mean, they say that the devil works hard, right? Because the devil works hard. Because in this instance, they're already trying to lay the groundwork for being like, well, look, federal judges, you know, maybe they shouldn't be sitting in their own seats. We need to get rid of them from those seats. Why? So they can plop a whole bunch of pro-Trump judges in there instead. But getting back to one of the main purposes of this conversation today is when you can get rid of a parking lot lawyer like Alina Habba and you can put in a good U.S. attorney. And listen, I can't speak to these two front runners for the job, but I'm going to hope that these federal judges that are going to be voting or meeting on Monday ostensibly to find a U.S. attorney, that they're going to make the right decision here. Trying to be optimistic here. We're going to keep our eye on that. We're going to see what the news is coming out. Be mad, be outraged, demand accountability, because you know I sure as hell am. Katie Phang here. We launched the Katie Phang News Channel in partnership with the Midas Touch Network so we could bring you the latest in legal and political news. Straight, no chaser. So if you're a fellow truth teller, hit that subscribe button and share the word about this channel so we can build a high information America together.